Over the past decade, the Safdie brothers have emerged as distinctive directors in the film world, known for their visceral storytelling and feverish depictions of characters living in New York City. The films have a distinct feeling. They are tense and anxiety-inducing, and many chalk this up to their form through the use of long lenses, extreme close-ups, handheld cameras, and overlapping dialogue, which do contribute to their effectiveness. But there's something I believe has contributed most significantly to their success and why their movies hit so hard. They are completely devoted to their characters and the reality they inhabit. The brothers' approach to filmmaking is grounded in a deep commitment to character, resulting in a body of work that transcends conventional storytelling. The Safdie brothers' movies are so compelling because they seamlessly blend cinema and reality. They have said their main goal in filmmaking is to fictionalize reality, to make things they believe are real. There aren't many directors who are able to achieve a balance between depicting realistic narratives that, while grounded, can feel almost otherworldly due to their extreme and unusual subject matter. To them, the marking of a great movie is when you're able to watch and not be reminded that it is a movie. And in order to fictionalize reality, you need to have a profound regard for your characters. So at the heart of Safdie cinema lies a fundamental principle that they've tried to stay true to: the elevation of characters above plot or narrative progression. Earlier in their careers, they said that the essence of good cinema is not confined to plot mechanics, but resides in a character's nuances, complexities, and emotional arcs. The core of their films are the authentic behaviors of their characters, with the plot merely unfolding as a natural consequence of the protagonist's impulsive decisions. So, how do they achieve this authenticity? They draw inspiration from real-life experiences and the people they encounter. They believe in people who have never acted before. They trust their instincts. They fully immerse themselves into the fabric of their characters' worlds. They research a ton and constantly revise scripts and character treatments based on their actors. And as a result, we get Lenny, Harley, Connie, and Howard. Inherently flawed human beings who make shitty decisions. Anti-heroes who you can't help but kind of like or feel compassionate towards. The markings of actually interesting characters. To illustrate the Safdies' process and dedication to character development, I'm going to take you on a journey through their films. I'll start from their first joint feature-length directorial debut, Daddy Longlegs. Josh Safdie was attending South by Southwest when he spotted Ronald Bronstein, another filmmaker who was at the festival for his movie Frownland. Josh recounts seeing him give an acceptance speech, and his goofy demeanor oddly reminded him of his father. The three soon became acquainted and worked on a few things together. They hadn't quite figured out the main character for their upcoming movie yet, who was going to be some sort of rendition of their father, but they did know they wanted Ronnie to play the role. They sat with Ronnie for days to flesh out this character with him, gauging the impact each scene had based on his expressions. His reactions served as a litmus test, indicating whether a scene resonated or fell short. For the Safdies, it is incredibly important their actors believe in the characters they are playing. Through this process, Ronnie became a weird version of their father, blending elements of their own childhood memories and Ronnie's own insights on the character. What resulted was the character Lenny, a divorced father and movie theater projectionist who lives by the seat of his pants. He gains custody of his kids for 2 weeks annually, and during this time, he's repeatedly irresponsible, engages in reckless behavior, places the boys in inappropriate situations, and takes them on impromptu adventures. He's trying to be a good dad, but he has no idea how to take care of them. It's a bizarre exploration of fatherhood that is as funny as it is endearing and also horrific. Daddy Longlegs provides a nuanced portrayal of a father who you feel both affection and animosity toward. As a viewer, when you're faced with this sort of conflict, I think it's a sign of solid writing. Do you really want to see a morally sound, idealized version of a person in a movie? No. Well, at least I don't. Daddy Longlegs solidified the involvement of Ronnie Bronstein and their work going forward. He is now typically referred to as the third Safdie brother. Ronnie, Josh, and Benny, in varying combinations, co-wrote, edited, and directed their next 3 movies together. The trio really forms an interesting dynamic with distinct approaches to writing and editing. Josh is very romantic and seeks to find the romance in every situation, while Ronnie focuses on deepening the pathos of characters. And Benny is rational. He prioritizes the audience experience and fears monotony. Ronnie has credited Benny with maintaining the momentum that you see in all their films. I think this symbiosis between romance, character pathos, and rationality is reflected in every one of their movies. Let's move on to their 2014 film, Heaven Knows What. The film revolves around the tumultuous life of Harley, a young woman struggling with addiction on the unforgiving streets of New York City. The film explores her chaotic relationship with Ilya, her equally troubled boyfriend, as they navigate homelessness and heroin addiction. The inception of Heaven Knows What begins with the chance casting of Arielle Holmes. Josh was doing research in the Diamond District for Uncut Gems and spotted Arielle getting on the subway. He describes this moment in detail. He noticed her in a beautiful dress, was enamored by her poised demeanor, and believed she exuded a star-like quality. He followed his gut feeling and got to know her, and they started meeting up once a week just to talk. And she ended up telling him everything about her life, namely that she was a heroin addict. Josh then commissioned her to write about her life and paid her per page. The goal was to turn her book, Mad Love in New York City, into a movie and cast her as the lead. So Arielle agreed to star herself under the name Harley and recreate her experiences over the last 18 months, which resulted in the film becoming a hybrid of truth and fiction, based off of Arielle's own memories. The Safdies had mentioned their love for Abbas Kiarostami's Close Up, which clearly had an influence on the inspiration behind Heaven Knows What. Close Up is about the trial of a man who impersonated a filmmaker and features the people involved acting as themselves. They seem to have always been fascinated with the idea of bending reality by retelling it and dramatizing it, but in doing so, creating something grander than the original truth. During filming, Arielle often questioned scenes, pointing out discrepancies from how it actually unfolded in real life, which led them to really question and flesh out the most effective way to portray the events. Josh describes the process as such. The goal was not to interpret the closest version of the truth, but rather uncover a greater truth, which captured what Arielle was experiencing and feeling. For the shoot, they fully integrated themselves into Arielle's world by shooting in places she hung out and with people she knew. They street casted, and they even had the real Ilya there on set. Ilya in the movie was played by Caleb Landry Jones, who was one of the more established actors they'd ever had in one of their films. This is where they began to blend professional actors with first-time actors, a practice that has since become a distinctive hallmark for them. I really admire how the brothers would undertake risks by casting numerous non-actors to make the architecture of the film that much more realistic. They seem to have an incredible sense of identifying people and placing faith in their abilities. A good example of this is Buddy Duress, who made his film debut as Mike in Heaven Knows What, and who we later see in Good Time. He was allegedly famous on the streets, and actually while filming, had a warrant out for his arrest. Right after meeting him, Josh and Benny quickly realized Buddy's talent, which led him to have a bigger role than what was initially planned. Apparently, every day they asked one another, "Do we have a movie here if he gets arrested tomorrow?" And funny enough, he got arrested the day they finished filming the movie and was in jail for a year. So as a result of all of this, Heaven Knows What captures an unflinching look at Harley, or Arielle's, life as she wrestles her demons and desperately pursues love while searching for the next high. Her character makes mistakes, turns away help, and succumbs to reckless patterns of behavior. You end up caring so deeply for her, and you want her to be okay. It's a really difficult and unforgiving film to watch. Also, it's worth mentioning that before Heaven Knows What, the Safdies made a documentary called Lenny Cook, based on Lenny Cook, the basketball player, which was technically a documentary, but they approached it the same way. They messed with the timeline, they recreated events, and used multiple takes different times, but the whole point was to get at the true emotion Lenny experienced. Daddy Longlegs, Lenny Cook, and Heaven Knows What epitomize the Safdies and Ronnie's pursuit for the greater truth. They are all movies on what it's like to remember. And while they do not mirror the exact events that happened, they remain faithful to the genuine emotions connected to the memories of both the characters and Safdies themselves. Following Heaven Knows What, their subsequent two movies took a less personal approach. They weren't derived from childhood memories or a memoir, and their scope grew much larger, which inevitably presented them with opportunities to develop the plot. But could they abandon their principle on characters over narrative progression? Did they manage to still craft authentic characters? Well, let's talk about Good Time, the movie which many call their masterpiece. Robert Pattinson famously cold emailed the brothers after he just saw the poster for Heaven Knows What. The Safdies knew they didn't have a role for him in the movie they were currently working on, which was Uncut Gems, but they had been interested in exploring a particular world and a specific type of character. They described this character as someone you'd meet in Cops. Ronnie was helping them write Uncut Gems at the time, and they started formulating this character together with Pattinson in mind. Drawing inspiration from the apprenticeship of Duddy Kravitz and Buddy Duress's, yes, that Buddy's, prison journals, and Josh's lengthy discussions with him while in prison, the character of Connie was meticulously crafted. Ronnie and Josh even ended up writing an extensively long character biography about Connie in order to understand him. In their earlier films, their work was shaped within constraints, like having a tiny budget and crew. But with the involvement of the one and only Robert Pattinson, they were provided with additional resources which could expand the film's scope. And with this, they were finally faced with the predicament of plot over character development. The Safdies have emphasized that when you're a writer, it is important to not force a character to act in a way that doesn't ring true to their nature. Sometimes writers might have a specific direction in mind for the story and retroactively manipulate a character's traits to facilitate that direction, which compromises the credibility of both the narrative and character. Ronnie allegedly told Josh that he had to stop being so afraid of narrative plotting. So Good Time was their first attempt to have something very plotty while trying to maintain the psychological rich characters. So out came Connie, a pathological liar who manipulates those around him, including his mentally handicapped brother Nick. While Connie is self-centered, his actions stem from the desire to free his brother from the system and their grandmother, and secure a life for them beyond the city. Connie's character is complex. Beneath the apparent selfishness lies an undeniable love for his brother that compels him to protect using methods that are obviously a bit misguided. But maybe this is the only way he knows how. They've actually mentioned a few times in interviews that they were going to include a few scenes where Connie talked about his feelings, but then they scrapped it because they knew it wouldn't work. It would throw the whole rhythm off. Why? Well, would Connie actually talk about his feelings? No, he wouldn't. And it wouldn't be fair to the integrity of the character. As I've been talking about, the Safdies really strive for a seamless integration of actor and character, which serve as the linchpin to the effectiveness of their movies. They tailored Lenny to Ronald Bronstein, Harley as Ariel, and Connie with Rob Pattinson in mind. This care goes beyond their protagonists. When selecting supporting roles, like in Good Time, the script and character descriptions would be forwarded to the casting department, and once they found suitable people, the characters were then revisited, rewritten, and adjusted based on the casting choices. Their whole process is kind of like a continuous feedback loop. Okay, moving on to their last feature, Uncut Gems. The movie that really brought the Safdies fully to the mainstream. Uncut Gems is the product of their extensive research and unwavering determination. It really exemplifies the lengths they go to when developing an idea and building the architecture of their films. As I previously mentioned, Josh was doing research in the Diamond District for Uncut Gems when he spotted Ariel, but he had a really hard time gaining acceptance in the district, and it required a considerable effort to establish an in within the scene. But after investing a lot of time in the area, they eventually encountered a guy who vouched for them to the locals, and with this endorsement, they were finally able to fully integrate themselves into the community where they were able to observe the people and the lifestyle of the Diamond District. The writing of Uncut Gems was around a 9-year process. They'd hit roadblocks and leave the script to pursue other projects, but they never gave up on it. The script famously went through 160 rewrites, largely because of the characters and new actors coming on board. My favorite anecdote from this film's almost decade-long journey was their persistence on having Adam Sandler play the role of Howard. Once they started writing the script for Uncut Gems in 2012, they knew that their protagonist, Howard, had to be played by Adam Sandler, who they were all incredibly fond of as an actor. Howard Ratner is a compulsive New York City jeweler ensnared by a gambling addiction. His penchant for high-stakes bets continually plunges him into debt with those who have extended favors. He struggles to reconcile his gambling compulsion and work with family responsibilities, yet despite his manipulative nature, his persuasive charm affords him some leeway while maneuvering through the chaotic world he inhabits. The Safdies knew Adam Sandler was the only actor who could properly mold himself into the character of Howard. The aim was to create a character who, despite throwing himself into absurd situations, would retain the audience's compassion, someone who you genuinely rooted for. So after they had made Daddy Longlegs, they sent the script to Sandler's team, and it never reached him. They tried to figure out a way to have Howard be played by someone else. They tried to make Howard older and talk to Harvey Keitel. They talked to Sacha Baron Cohen. They even tried making Howard younger when Jonah Hill was interested in the project. But none of these alternatives made sense. They had the character in mind, and it had to be Adam Sandler. Luckily, Sandler saw a good time at Cannes and finally gave them a call. And much like when Robert Pattinson got involved with Good Time, when they officially booked Adam Sandler, the film became so massive. There was so much more they could now do in the world they were creating around Howard. And as more names joined the roster, like Kevin Garnett, additional elements could be woven into the plot, expanding the possibility for a richer and highly complex narrative. And so with all of this, the challenge remained. Could they maintain the integrity of Howard's character? I personally believe that both Connie and Howard's decisions remain faithful to their characters, and the sequence of events that unfolds appears to be natural. I do wonder when in the writing process the Safdies and Ronnie decided that Howard needed to die at the end of Uncut Gems. As Howard's storyline progressed, it did seem fitting that he was barreling toward his own fate. And in Good Time, Connie's ending also seemed pretty realistic. He had to get arrested. There was no way he could be on the run forever. Howard and Connie were both hurtling toward their demise, and their actions really left no room for redemption. Whereas in Daddy Longlegs and Heaven Knows What, the stories of Lenny and Harley do not end as dramatically. They basically continue on the same trajectory. Lenny sort of kidnapped his children, and you assume that the consequences will be the mother seeking full custody, but Lenny will probably continue to do whatever it takes to fight to see his kids. And Harley returns to New York City after being abandoned by Ilya, silently joining her friends at a table who are listening to Mike tell the latest wild tale. She will likely go on to go and get high with Mike and continue living her life 1 hour at a time. Ultimately, I have appreciated every one of Ronnie and the Safdie Brothers characters. I like how none of them undergo profound realizations or substantial changes. There's no evident growth. There's never a dramatic personal arc in which they decide to alter the course of their life for the better. While watching, I found empathy for each of them. Lenny will drug the kids to go to work, but then he takes them for piggyback rides and makes up stuff about mosquitoes, and I can't help but smile at him trying. I cared deeply for Harley, and even though she continued to go back to Ilya, I felt like I understood why. Connie just wanted to get his brother out of jail and take him to the country for a better life, and Howard was just a man struggling with his own ambition and self-destruction. And not to mention, all of the characters orbiting around the protagonists, I cared about them deeply too. It's clear that Benny, Josh, and Ronnie care about the audience and want to give us the best possible movie. They've called this a transfer of enthusiasm. They approach character development seriously, delving into the pathos of their subjects and treating them with both loyalty and compassion. And this is what makes a great filmmaker.